Hi, I'm Lisa Prather, and welcome to The Voice of Health with our host, Dr. Robert Prather of the Prather Practice, where lives are changed every day through the natural approach to healthcare. Well, today we're going to talk about controversial, misunderstood, misdiagnosed tick-borne diseases. And why is the controversy involved in these diseases?
Well, it's difficult to be involved with that. Mm-hmm. Most people have a lot of frustration with doing it. Having those particular infections. Doctors are frustrated. Patients are frustrated. Center of Disease Control is frustrated. Uh-huh. Matter of fact, one of the things that they say on the CDC site is that it's hard to diagnose. Mm-hmm. It mimics a lot of other different types of diseases. It has a lot of controversy because several, even the experts are disagreeing. How many people actually have it? Who has it? Is this actually an infection? Is it an autoimmune reaction? Is that what's really going on? People have gone through and had long-term type of illnesses, and it's very debilitating. And then be able to start on a path of the actual treatment for it, and then get better. So everybody's kind of mad at everybody. Mm-hmm. Nobody really understands it. It can have a wide variety of symptoms. But it can be actually deadly. So it's something that is a very controversial mm-hmm. type of a disease, just because nobody's really agreeing on what should be done and what's the definition.
So we're talking about tick-borne diseases. What are tick-borne diseases?
Well, the Center of Disease Control actually divides those up into 4 different types of diseases. There's the Lyme disease, which is a very famous one, which if you actually mention Lyme disease to a lot of physicians, they kind of roll their eyes. Mm-hmm. Because it's very popular on the internet. And people come in to their doctor and say, I think I have Lyme's disease. And the doctor will oftentimes, what the patients say is that they'll roll their eyes. Because they hear that.
Another one that says they have Lyme disease.
Right. And then as they do the testing, there is a lot of controversy about the testing. So and we'll go through some of the reasons on why that's actually so difficult. So there's Lyme's disease, there's Rickettsia, there's ehrlichiosis, and tularemia are the 4 different categories that most tick-borne diseases are actually categorized in. And one of the things is that it's not just ticks that actually transmit these diseases. It's the most common way because ticks actually will stay attached longer. So the longer that the tick is actually in place, the more likely you are to get the infection. But it can be transmitted by any type of a insect that bites and then comes and bites you. Mm. So it's usually an infection that is existing in other different types of animals. Mm-hmm. And then you get there's a bite that occurs. They take in some blood, and then they come and bite you again, and then they transmit the bacteria. So it not necessarily just tick-borne, but ticks are probably one of the biggest culprits on that, just because of the physiology and the way that they work. Mm-hmm. So ticks are a very common way of actually doing it, but it could be actually any insect type of bite that could be involved in that.
Because you hear a lot about the ticks,
right?
And Lyme's, and there's 4 types of tick-borne
diseases. Well, and then as you get into it, one of the problems then with a lot of the controversy is once you figure out how to test for it, you have to find out, which bacteria it is, mm-hmm. and then actually test for it. But, when you're just talking about Lyme's disease, there's 45 different kinds of bacteria that actually is involved in that they've identified at this point. And they're mutating on a very rapid type of basis. So, trying to nail down these guys and actually be able to have an effective test can be rather difficult.
And that's where the frustration comes.
That's where a lot of the frustration comes from. And when you're talking about Ricketsias, there's actually 6 major categories of Ricketsias. Mm-hmm. So, you're talking about with the whole flow and ebb of insects coming over from other countries. Mm-hmm. You're just talking about the ones that were in the United States. When you're talking about like when you're going to the Mediterranean, there is a whole nother group of Ricketsias that exist there. China has their own. So as this is kind of going back and forth and all the travel, there's a tremendous amount of transmission of these particular types of infections. Mm-hmm. So they're actually identifying new ones every day.
It's interesting. And, in our 4th segment today, we actually have one of our patients giving a testimony
right,
regarding this because he was misdiagnosed, correct, with lupus.
Lupus, a very common misdiagnosis, mm-hmm. because, as you are, I've had several people who actually did have infections that were misdiagnosed as lupus, different types of forms of arthritis, different autoimmune diseases, and really what they had was an infection. Mm-hmm. So, as you're doing this can actually cause a lot of problems. But it even goes on beyond that. When you're talking about these particular infections, they can actually then lead to an autoimmune disease, because the immune systems can crash with this. And as the immune system crashes, then the body can actually develop an autoimmune disease on top of it. So you could be truly dealing with an infection and an autoimmune disease.
So why are these diseases misunderstood?
Well, it's when you've got something that is a moving target like this, mm-hmm. It can be, you have to really be an investigator with it. And if you have a 5-minute appointment with your doctor, there's no way that they can actually deal with this particular type of issue. Mm-hmm. It actually takes some real investigation. It takes a lot of brain work. And it's not just based on lab tests, but you need to get history. Mm-hmm. You need to do an examination, see what's going on. You have to do extremely thorough lab testing, to actually figure this out. So it's a very time-consuming, a very involved type of an infection, and not easy to really pinpoint.
Well, we were just with one of your colleagues in the Dominican Republic, and he's from Alabama, I believe, right? Mm-hmm. And had some issues that they're trying to figure out, and you were, he wanted your opinion.
Sure.
It was interesting, the questions you asked him, that possibly this might be his issue.
Especially from that area, there are particular types of infections that can actually be a real big problem mm-hmm. along those lines, especially with, but it sounded very much along those lines.
Yeah, it's interesting. And the doctors hadn't thought of that yet? They had
not. They had actually gone through a tremendous amount of testing, started him on a lot of treatments with very little effect. Mm-hmm. One of the things that can be a real problem is if you have an infection and then you start to suspect that it's an autoimmune disease and start to treat with the normal types of treatments where you do basically some immune suppression. Uh-huh. As you do that, you have an infection and then you're suppressing the immune system. You can imagine how well that goes over. Mm-hmm. So then you actually have you're actually spreading the disease and actually making it much, much worse. There was a gentleman that I know of that had that type of scenario. He actually had a Lyme disease, and they gave him immune suppressant drugs, and his heart actually failed. He actually had to have a heart transplant. Mm-hmm. Because the infection then was able to get into the heart and cause a tremendous amount of destruction.
Well, I think I know the answer to this, but, are these diseases serious?
Very serious. They do have now it's not a high death rate, but it can be 3%, or even possibly on some of them even higher, especially if you are treated with steroids and other things, because then you actually have the infection actually gets deeper into the system.
Yeah, it sounds like, too, you'd feel like you're dying.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, who's most at risk?
Well, they usually find that men are the ones who actually get this more often than women. The reason is because men are actually out in the woods more. Most of the guys the people that I've had with infections were hunters. So they were out there with the deer. They were sitting up in camouflage back in the weeds where you get ticks. And so a lot of them actually wound up, getting the bite infections out into the wild. If you're in the house all the time, you're not going to get that many bug bites. Mm-hmm. It's when you're out there in nature and you're getting bit by about everything. And you're actually also more likely because you're going up and, you're skinning deers, you're skinning rabbits, you're skinning different types of animals. And oftentimes they actually have the ticks on them. And the ticks will transfer over. Like one guy bagged a deer and then he dragged it to his, truck and then put it in and then drove it home. But, he had actually picked up a tick from the deer.
Wow.
So, hunters, older guys are more likely. It becomes much more of a problem for anybody who has a suppressed immune system for some reason, especially someone who's actually taking some pharmaceuticals that might be involved in suppressing the immune system, too.
Interesting. When we come back, more on the controversial, misunderstood. That's a big word for me.
That is a big word. It's early in the morning.
Yes, misdiagnosed tick-borne disease. You can win a free 60-minute massage in a relaxing spa at the Prather practice. Each month, we have a drawing to give away a free massage to one of our lucky Facebook and Twitter fans. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter on our website at thevoiceofhealthradio.com. This is The Voice of Health with Dr. Robert Prather. The Voice of Health Wellness Tip with Dr. Robert Prather of the Prather practice. Well, what is the Gallup report?
The first ever annual report on people's awareness of chiropractic. The Gallup system has never really done a survey on actual chiropractic to find out where people are with chiropractic, their understanding.
So what did they find out? How do people view chiropractic?
About 14% of the population on a yearly basis use chiropractors. About 50% of all adults have been to a chiropractic, and they have a very positive view of chiropractic. We have the highest satisfaction rate of any healthcare professional.
Interesting.
With the people who've actually visited us.
And experienced it.
People
have a lot of opinion that haven't even gone to one.
Right, and have no idea what it is. So when they asked people who had not been to a chiropractor, the other 50%, of those 25% said chiropractic they considered was dangerous. Have you had any experience with chiropractic? No.
Interesting.
The other group was like, I'm not really quite sure. There's a lot of misconception on that, on what's actually going on. And there's a lot of opinions that really don't hold water. One of the things that keeps people away from chiropractic is it safe? Is this a safe modality? And even a lot of professionals aren't aware of the facts that's associated with that. But according to an independent group called the insurance company, which does, if you are in the insurance business, you know that they are extremely thorough because they're talking about their money. Chiropractic malpractice has the lowest rates of any healthcare professional. Nurses have a higher malpractice rate. Dental assistants have a higher malpractice rate. My medical assistant has a higher malpractice rate than I do. So, the thought patterns on that chiropractic is dangerous. It is actually the least dangerous of all the healthcare systems out there. The research is just, overwhelming on the benefit of chiropractic.
Schedule your appointment at the Prather Practice, 317-848-8048. That's 317-848-8048. Or learn more on our website at thevoiceofhealthradio.com. The Prather Practice, restoring hope.
And I'm feeling good.
You're listening to The Voice of Health with Dr. Robert Prather of the Prather Practice, the most comprehensive wellness center in the Midwest. Well, we're talking today about the misunderstood and misdiagnosed tick-borne diseases. And, we hear about Lyme disease. Dr.
Yeah, that's
Prather.
a very, very popular one right now.
Yeah. And I have seen that. I was at our veterinarian, and I was talking to the front office gal, and she was saying that she had Lyme disease, and the veterinarian was behind her, and he rolled his eyes at me. Yeah, she doesn't have Lyme disease. But
I've had an awful lot of patients who came in who said that they had Lyme disease and actually had been treated with it, for it. I had one gal who came in and says, well, I've got Lyme disease, and I've been treated now for 3 years for it, and I've gone to 3 different doctors, each one for a year treatment. I says, well, how's that worked out? And she said, well, I'm worse. Each year I've gotten worse. I said, okay, let me take a look at the lab tests that you have. And I said, well, it doesn't really look like Lyme disease from these lab tests. She said, oh, not another one who's not agreeing that I have Lyme disease. She says,
she wanted Lyme disease so bad.
I've gone through so many different types of things. And I said, well, you've had 3 years of being treated for Lyme disease.
How's it working for you?
Yeah, how's it working for you? And she said, well, not well. And I said, so you're trying to find someone else who can treat you for Lyme disease? Yes. But what if you don't have Lyme disease? What if you have something else? Why don't we do some tests and find out what you've got going on? And come to find out, she had a very serious bacterial infection in her gut. Okay? That was definite pathogen. Caused, it was, I gave her the list of the symptoms that recur from that. It was completely found on a diagnostic test. Long story short, we started her on the program for that, and she came back and says, first time I took it, the next day I actually felt better. And this is the first time in 3 years I felt better. So we went through, did the whole treatment. 3 months later, she was all over all of her symptoms, and she was fine. She never had Lyme disease. Now, the bacteria that she had causes some of the tests to show up as some positives along those lines, and they had jumped to Lyme disease. But it wasn't really enough to be clear that it truly was. So here was a person who was going through a tremendous amount of expenses, not getting better, actually getting worse. The particular bacteria that she had was actually liked antibiotics, so it actually feeds it.
Yeah.
So she was getting worse, and she was destroying her normal gut flora, which was actually trying to keep that in check. So what she was doing on the treatment not only was not helping, but it was actually making the situation worse, which she told me later, each year she got worse. with the treatment. So, Lyme's disease, I have had patients with Lyme's disease, but in my, 30 years of treating, we're probably talking about maybe 10 patients. So it wasn't that common.
Right.
So about 1 out of 20 people who come into me and say they have Lyme's disease actually have it.
Yeah.
And being aware of that, and because you have to actually differentiate. Matter of fact, I get much more Rickettsia than I do Lyme's disease.
Well, let's talk about that. There are, you said, 4 types of tick-borne diseases. Common one, is Lyme disease. What are the other 3?
Well, ehrlichiosis and tularemia, and I've never had either one of those. Tularemia is considered rabbit fever because rabbits carry it around so much, and that's usually how it's transmitted. But I've never had either one of those particular infections in my office. We have had Lyme's disease, as I said. Most of the people didn't actually catch Lyme's disease here. Minnesota, Wisconsin is a very hot area. The East Coast is very big. Most of the people that we had were actually caught it there. Rickettsia is actually more common here in Indiana than Lyme's. So, if you actually catch it here, I would probably guess it's going to be more of a Rickettsia infection than it is going to be a Lyme disease. And you treat those differently.
Right.
So, being aware of what's going on, really how to diagnose it and understand what's going, how to treat those is a very important type of aspect.
Well, let's talk about that. How are these infections diagnosed?
The biggest thing is that, of course, there are lab tests for it, but it's very, very involved. You have a lot of different types of forms along those lines. So, you should be doing the lab tests, but there are certain types of things that you actually see starting to occur, basically in the immune system that shows up that there's an infection. History is probably one of the most important types of aspects of it. When someone sits there and said, I know that I got bit by a tick or an insect, and right afterwards I started to get sick, that's just a red flag for me. There's different types of rashes that occur. There are definite changes in the lymphatic tissue where it actually settles. Actually gives me a differentiation on the different types of infections it could be. Rickettsia infections have a very definite pattern on a lot of the symptoms that actually occur. So, a huge amount of that is examination and history to actually come up with the proper diagnosis. The actual testing can be rather sketchy at best. Even the best of the diagnoses and lab tests actually can give false positives and false negatives. So having an awareness of that is very, very important. But, keeping an open mind along those lines and usually having a history along those lines of some type of a rash, some type of a bite, insect bite, gives you a lot of the clues that need to be there.
Yeah, now, how do you prevent the tick bites?
Well, that's a very important thing. The prevention is a very big thing. So actually, if you're going to be out in the woods, you need to use proper insect repellent. You need to have something with some DEET in it that really repels the insects and really cover yourself. There are actually clothes that have already been permeated with the particular types of insect repellents. That's a very important thing. Keeping yourself well covered is very critical. And then when you get in, actually doing a very thorough check to make sure that you don't have a tick that's attached to you is also very important. And then looking at any type of insect bites, seeing if there's any type of a rash, being out in the woods, and then the next day having a fever or any type of lymph node swelling, stomach upset, anything like that, should give you the idea of actually getting tested right away. But of course, if you do lab tests, it's not really going to show up. So going to a doctor and possibly even getting a round of antibiotics along those lines is very good. Antibiotics can be very effective, but they have to be done right away for them to be effective. If you've had this particular infection for any length of time, the antibiotics, we haven't really found a lot of effectiveness along those lines.
Now, say you find a tick, how should they be removed?
What you want to do is get some good tweezers, and then you actually raise them up so that you have them sort of straight up and down with the head right in there, and then actually removing the head at that point, using antibiotic solution right away, and then watching that area for a rash would be extremely important.
Yeah, I mean, we check our dogs and our animals,
That's actually another big source of getting ticks, is dog owners are actually higher at risk for these particular type of infections, especially if your dog jumps on your bed, lays there for a little while, they can actually leave a tick there. And then you can actually get it that night. So dogs or cats...
That's why you don't let our dogs sleep on our bed.
That's why I don't let our dogs actually sleep on our bed. Because they can easily transmit tick-borne ticks to the bed, and tick-borne infections are something to very definitely avoid.
So what are some of the medical treatments that should be done,
after the infection? Well, when you're talking about medically, really getting an antibiotic within the first 2 weeks, and you actually have to have a very strong course of that. And it depends on which type of infection you have. Doxycycline is the most common one that's used in these types of instances. But, really having it checked, find out what you need, and then getting on an immediate course of antibiotics really goes a long way in preventing that infection from really settling in. The chances of that actually happen are as one of the experts said, slim to none, because most people think it's just a passing infection. Most people aren't even aware that they were bitten by a tick.
Right. I mean, I'm not aware of even when I have a mosquito bite.
Right. So, it can be it sounds all really good, but it oftentimes doesn't work in reality. That's why you need to be, people need to be aware of that and be intentional, because it usually just doesn't happen that you have that kind of awareness.
When I was even thinking the woman that was misdiagnosed that came into your office after 3 years.
3 years.
Thinking she had Lyme disease, the antibiotics were making it worse for her.
Right. It really wasn't, it wasn't effective because that wasn't the problem. And I had asked her, what was your outdoor, lifestyle? And there wasn't any. So I was like, I don't know about this. Well, I took a lot of walks in the woods, which could definitely be, were you aware of any ticks or bites or anything like that you ever had? And she said, no. I said, about how long were you out there? 15, 20-minute walk, once a week. And it just didn't really make sense. So getting the good history is a very important type of thing. And matching that up with what's going on, and then doing really definite testing to find out.
Okay. When we come back, more on misunderstood, misdiagnosed tick-borne diseases. Listen to the Voice of Health Radio on your smartphone or tablet on all of the top radio apps available. TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, and iHeartRadio. You can find these apps and more on our website at thevoiceofhealthradio.com. This is The Voice of Health with Dr. Robert Prather. Laughter is the best medicine.
As a kid, Halloween was amazing. You dress like a superhero, you bang on your neighbor's door, and they give you candy. I do that today, and my neighbor wants me arrested. Probably because I make a hot cat woman. Kitty wants some candy.
Are you frustrated by not getting to the root cause of your health issue? Are you tired of not knowing why you're always fatigued? Are you wanting to say no to toxic drugs? Have you lost hope? Are you just tired of being sick and tired? At the Prather Practice, we want you to know that we have the answers for you. We offer the alternative to the disease care model. We are the drug-free model to health and wellness. At the Prather practice, we look for the underlying cause of your health problem and not just the symptomatology. Through thorough diagnostics, we find your individual health blueprint for your treatment. Where the disease care model is symptom-based, the structure-function model we practice gets to the root of your health issue. The Prather practice is the most comprehensive wellness center in the Midwest. Our integrated practice offers you the most treatment options to restore your health and your hope. Learn more about the Prather practice by calling 317-848-8048 or learn more on our website at thevoiceofhealthradio.com. Misunderstood and misdiagnosed tick-borne diseases. And Dr. Prather, I know in our last segment, after this segment, we will have a patient of the Prather practice who was misdiagnosed with lupus tell his story of he actually ended up with, it wasn't Lyme disease, correct? It was
actually Rickettsia. Yeah.
Rickettsia, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, what is your success rate with the tick-borne diseases?
Very high. As I said before, I had some Lyme cases that actually were truly Lyme cases that had come into me. One person was actually from New Hampshire, came over to me because I had success with someone else in a very severe case of Lyme disease. Matter of fact, they were wheelchair-bound. Had an IV drip as they came in. And so it was... very, very serious. Was actually an official Lyme case. Very good results. What we do is we actually approached it not from eliminating the infection. They had already hit the antibiotics along those lines. And by this point, it was completely immune to every antibiotic known to man, because they had already tried every antibiotic that was known to man. That was not an effective means to do that. So what we did was we did some thorough diagnostics, rebuilt the immune system was the really important part of the treatment. Then also we did a homeopathic treatment where we were going to get a lot of the autoimmune reaction under control. Because what had happened is that the body had become very sensitive and had produced a lot of immunoglobulins to actually fight this particular infection that had actually gone astray and was actually causing problems throughout the body. The body had gone a little bit nuts because of the infection. So the homeopathics actually work very much like an allergy shot. You give a very small amount of something and it desensitizes the body to the particular type of reaction that it's having. So what we did was the homeopathics were one of the things that had never really been tried. A lot of the other things that had been done were very similar to what we were doing. But what we did was we hit that, and that really made a big difference because we desensitized the body to the whole immune system type of reaction. And as we did that, then we saw a very, very definite type of a settling on the system where the body was actually then able to settle down and stop the autoimmune type of reaction that really changed the whole course of the disease. So, as I had said before, you have the infection, but then even if you have the infection under control, you can actually start to have the autoimmune reaction that's related to it. And the autoimmune reaction can actually then be the main cause of the continued disease process. Mm-hmm. So it took about a year, but where the patient never really completely recovered, their full health like they did. But they were able to basically function, and you were no longer able to tell that they were sick. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
They were definitely not the same person that they were before. But it was a huge difference. They they could work, they could carry on. It was considered by them a very big success story.
Interesting. So you're talking about treatments, homeopathic treatments, very helpful.
Right.
What other treatments are provided for? that you provide at the Prather practice for tick-borne disease?
One of the big things is actually rebuilding the immune system, and the best way to rebuild the immune system is to get the gut working right. 80% of the immune system is around the gut, and if you can get that back up to functioning normally, it takes immediate stress off of the immune system. And as it does that, a heightened, better functioning immune system results in a dramatic decrease in the symptoms of the disease.
We were even talking about it's fall right now, and a lot of people are getting sick.
Yes.
One thing you've really taught me is to rest.
Oh, yes.
I would drive through, just keep driving. And yesterday, came home from work, took a nap. I mean, rest is so important. And as Americans, we don't rest. We don't take the time to rest.
Right.
And how can the immune system
recover in that type of instance? Yes.
Yeah.
It is a lifestyle types of changes, and renewing yourself, having the proper sleep, reducing your stress levels, keeping the whole system up to par is a very important part of any type of a program along those lines. Reversing a lot of the people that we've had that have had Lyme's or been treated for these particular types of infections have had both large amounts of antibiotics and also oftentimes a large amount of steroids that have been used. And those will completely cause an inability of the body to actually deal with the whole problem. It actually makes the issue worse. So getting those reversed is a very, very important part of the whole system. Making sure people get the proper amount of rest, the proper nutrients. You need to go thoroughly through all the nutritional needs, because there's a greater stress on the body when you have that type of an infection. There's deficiencies in vitamins and minerals and fatty acids and amino acids, because mounting that kind of a defense against this type of infection takes a lot of raw material. And so just by having the infection, you become deficient. Now, a lot of people actually get these infections and never even know it.
Right. They're harboring in their body, and they don't.
Well, and basically their body oftentimes can actually get rid of them because they have a strong immune system. So you need to, for these types of infections to take place, you need to have a situation where the immune system is actually usually depleted. There's extra stress. There's other things that are actually occurring that can actually lead to these infections from taking off. Because not everyone who gets bit by a tick with Lyme disease or Rickettsia or any of these others actually ever develop the actual infection. So usually there's a deficiency before they started. There's something that's wrong, and then this actually just makes the problem worse.
I think that's just a real strength of ours, is helping people build their immune system.
It is.
To prevent things like this from happening.
So what we're actually doing is approaching this from a totally different type of a way. We're actually coming about it from a structural, functional standpoint, which is a different type of a thought process. In other words, we're not just trying to go after the infection. We're trying to rebuild the body. And as we can rebuild the body, we can get some very, very excellent results because now the body's able to... there's no one better able to figure out how to fight an infection than the body. We can't come up with that.
The body's smart, isn't it?
The body's very, very intelligent if you give it the opportunity.
And a very intelligent creator.
It's a very intelligent creator. It can devise immunoglobulins, particular types of antigens, antibodies, that can actually go in there and pinpoint that particular infection and kill it. So the body's amazing if you give it the opportunity, and that's one of the big things with structure functional care that we do, because we get the body working properly, and when the body's working properly, it can usually handle almost anything that's thrown at it.
So what diagnostics are important in these cases?
Well, you have to look at the entire system. You need to have very, very thorough blood tests. Mm-hmm. You need to obviously look at the gut. So we do a GI stool kit where we have that evaluated. You also need to make sure there's no tissue mineral or heavy metal toxicities, so we test for that, because that could be an underlying problem. You need to then also, you can do lab tests for the particular nutrient deficiencies that are going on. So, really running it from A to Z and having a good, thorough picture is absolutely critical for these types of infections to get the body up to working correctly.
So who should seek treatment, with these tick-borne diseases?
Well, anyone who has had a suspicion or a thought process that they could have any of these particular types of diseases going on, mm-hmm. Those are things that, coming in here would be a very wise idea, mm-hmm. and just really having it tested. I hate to say this, but, there are doctors that I actually know of that, are close around here, who almost everybody who comes in has Lyme disease. That doesn't really make sense.
Right.
Because that's actually not as well known here in Indiana. So anybody who has any type of undiagnosed or suspicions along those lines should come in and actually get some thorough testing.
Well, up next, hear the story of a man diagnosed with lupus who wasn't getting any results from his doctors until Dr. Prather figured out the source of his problem was from a bug bite. Never miss an episode of The Voice of Health so that you can stay informed and empowered about your health. Get a podcast of our show automatically delivered to you every week by signing up for our show on iTunes. You can find that link on our website at thevoiceofhealthradio.com. And don't forget, thevoiceofhealthradio.com has complete archives of all of our past episodes with an audio library of information to help you add more life to your years and more years to your life. This is The Voice of Health with Dr. Robert Prather. The Voice of Health Wellness Tip with Dr. Robert Prather of the Prather Practice. Dr. Prather, there is a device you use at your office called the electrodermal screening, or EDS. Tell us a little bit about it and why you call it the lie detector for the body.
Well, the electrodermal screening unit is a galvanic skin response unit, and it actually falls under the same category as a lie detector test or biofeedback. So it is actually, we can actually rig our electrodermal screening to actually do lie detector. But it is also a good term on that is a lie detector for the body. Mm-hmm. When you're actually, you know a whole list of different types of products that could possibly work in each type of situation, but everybody knows that not everybody responds well to penicillin. Mm-hmm. Some people actually have some very negative reactions to it, matter even to death. Some people, it's a lifesaver. Well, that's true of everything. And what the electrodermal screening does is it actually gives you a predetermination on how you're actually going to respond to any type of thing that we might prescribe to you before you actually take it, which is extremely helpful. Now, it's not a diagnostic tool. It is not classified as a diagnostic tool. But as we've gotten the approval from the federal government on the use of it, we use it purely as a means of checking to see the body's response before you would actually take something.
Okay.
So it's a response machine. Mm-hmm. Now, you have to have knowledge beforehand on what products will actually work with each type of condition.
Right.
So we're very dependent upon our lab tests and the gold standard types of diagnostic tests. But then once you've determined that, what do you do with that? Because in our instrument, we have actually 80,000 different products that we can check on.
Wow.
So with that, we can actually find out what's going to work the best for you and how you're going to respond on things before you actually take them.
And what about its effectiveness?
Through clinical studies, they have found that it's 80% accurate, over 80% accurate, which, was what actually attracted me to it, because there's not too many things that you can actually have that kind of results with.
Right. And this electrodermal screening eliminates some of the guessing.
The guesswork is the biggest thing that we're trying to get rid of.
Schedule your appointment at the Prather Practice, 317-848-8048. That's 317-848-8048. Or learn more on our website at thevoiceofhealthradio.com. The Prather Practice, restoring hope.
It's a beautiful day. Sky falls, you feel like it's a beautiful day. So let it get away.
You're listening to The Voice of Health with Dr. Robert Prather of the Prather Practice, where our mission is restoring hope to our patients. For our Restoring Hope segment this week, we now go to Elaine Reisner with another patient success story from the Prather Practice.
We are joined by David and Diana to share their story at the Prather Practice. So what health situation first brought you into the Prather Practice?
Well, in September of 1994,
A long time ago.
I was having problems with my son, our oldest son, who was 13, AJ, and he had lots of ear infections and asthma and bad eczema, and so we were referred here, and we've been coming ever since.
Awesome. Now, I think it's gone over into some other family members too as well.
Exactly. So we started out with AJ, our oldest son, and then our daughter was seen, and then then I was seen, and then my husband was seen, and then our youngest son was seen.
Okay.
So we have lots of great stories to tell and lots of great results with the Prather Practice.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so now before you guys had come here, did you go to any other doctors, look at any other options?
Well, we had taken AJ to an ENT guy, pediatrician, and he did, what do you call it, plugs in your ears? What do they call those? Tubes, yeah. For his ear problems, but he was in the hospital a lot with the asthma thing, and breathing tense and kind of Panicsville. So friends of ours told us about Dr. Prather, and so we came up and was very successful in getting rid of all that stuff, and he doesn't have it anymore.
As an adult, he's totally healed of the asthma, and he had candida throughout his body, and Dr. Prather spent a lot of time. He still sees him, even though he lives in Colorado. AJ will still come back and check in with him every once in a while.
Awesome. Cool. So what other treatments did you guys get here? How did things go? What have you received? How were the results? That type of thing. This might be a time to tell your story as well, how things went.
Yeah, okay. So I guess the most significant story is we hadn't been here for a number of years. We were both doing well health-wise, and the whole family, and the kids had grown up and left. But in 2009, I had some symptoms which were diagnosed as lupus, which is unusual for a guy, and so they were treating me for it, but it was making me really sick. I just kept getting worse and worse. And so I stopped taking the medicine because I felt it was bad for me, that the doctors were giving me. And I won't tell you all the gory details, but anyway, it was making me really bad. And so I quit taking it, and the doctor said to me, he said, well, if you're not going to do what I tell you to, then I can't help you. And I said, okay, fine.
Lovely.
Yeah. And so I kind of went off on my own for a while, and then the symptoms started coming back. And so I went to see another doctor. He basically said the same thing about the lupus, because they did all kinds of blood tests and stuff that they do, very extensive. About that time, he was going to start prescribing to me a medicine that you take when you're getting chemotherapy for cancer.
Methotrexate,
which is, deadly stuff. And so, in fact, he said to me, well, I've seen some people live to be 90 when they're taking this. Well, that didn't really sound that encouraging. And so, anyway, I was actually praying and asking the Lord what to do, and the name Dr. Prather came back into my mind. Go see Dr. Prather. So I called, and long story short, came back to see him, and he looked through about 2 inches of paperwork that I'd gotten from these other doctors of blood tests and what have yous, and he put me on the EDS machine, And after about 10 or 15 minutes, he said, "Bingo." And I said, "What does that mean?" He said to me, "Have you ever been bitten by a bug?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I thought that's what started this whole deal, because that's when I started feeling bad. I was bitten numerous times by these little things that look like Japanese beetles that come out every October. The farmers brought them in to get rid of aphids on soybeans. So when they cut the soybeans, then these little bugs come out. I was bitten a bunch of times, and then I started feeling bad. And so the other doctors wouldn't listen to me about that because they didn't know what to do about that." And so he said, "Have you ever been bitten by a bug?" I said, "Yes." He said, "I think you have Rickettsia."
Or Rocky Mountain spotted fever.
Very similar to Rocky Mountain spotted fever, like a tick bite.
Oh.
Very unusual around here, and that's why the doctors didn't know.
Sure.
Yeah. So he started treating me for that. He said, "You'll probably feel worse before you get better." He was right.
At least gave you a warning, right?
Yeah, he gave me a warning, but within 3 to 6 months, I was pretty much back to normal.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's a kind of a thing that will always be there. You can't ever totally get rid of it. But I live a pretty normal life now. I'm still very active. I'm 75 years old, and I still get out and run and jog and ride bikes. And
good for you.
So I'm doing great.
That's a pretty phenomenal story.
If it hadn't been for us coming here, then Dave wouldn't be alive.
Yeah, I don't think I would have lived through
totally
that.
Sure. But I think the hardest part about it is that when you come to a practice like this, you need to walk through and hang with the program, because you do get worse before you get better. And there's a lot of strange things that happen here. I mean, good things, but things you've never heard of. And it's been our experience with our whole family that pretty much it always works. And the staff here is fabulous. It's expensive, but you got to be willing to be at the end of your rope, pretty much, which we have been for all the other situations. And we're just really thankful that we've been able to have been in the care, and we still are in the care of all you all here. So thank you.
You're welcome.
One other thing I might mention is that there's a lot of resistance from family members who say, "You're going to see a chiropractor?" There's a lot of, they don't believe that's going to work. You hear all that stuff a lot, and the medical profession pretty much downplays holistic medicine, but it works, and it's worked for us.
Sure. Well, and it sounds like that doctor that you saw first was kind of like guessing, well, hopefully this is what's going on, and then they give you a medication, which at the end of the day isn't really fixing the issue. It's more just putting a Band-Aid on it.
Was a superficial fix.
Yeah, it can maybe improve your quality of life, which at the end of the day it wasn't.
No.
And so, it sounds like you came here and we found out exactly what's going on. And
I think the thing that was so interesting to me was it was exactly the same blood work that the regular doctors were looking at. And Dr. Prather has such a different, he's brilliant, first of all, and he has such a different way that he looks at it, but he can look at the same numbers and come up with something totally different. And so I would just recommend everyone to come and get a consult.
Sure. Yeah.
To see what the deal is, because you won't be sorry.
Awesome. Well, guys, so, I'm sure there's people out there listening that may have this issue going on, and they're seeing their doctor right now, and they're like, I'm just not getting any answers. I really don't understand. I still feel this way. I still have this symptom. What is some advice you would give them for someone that's listening with that issue, or any issue for that matter?
Well, I think if you have children that have a lot of chronic ear infections or asthma, you need to come here and just see, because our son AJ is 35 and very healthy and climbs in Colorado and does all these things that he wouldn't normally be able to do if it wasn't for the practice here. And so you need to just really listen to people's bodies and try something new. Just because you haven't heard of it doesn't mean that it doesn't work. That's my experience with the relatives.
Come give it a try.
And for, I don't know, we just come here for everything, pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had surgeries, Dave's had surgeries, and we go to the regular physicians and we appreciate them. But for all the nutritional needs, there's a lot of things that you can avoid because the practice is so diverse. It's gotten so big in the 22 years that we've been, associated with it.
Awesome.
It's pretty amazing.
Well, cool, guys. Thank you for sharing your story, and I didn't know that about you, so that's pretty phenomenal to hear that. And we always love seeing you guys come in and visit us, and we appreciate your time. Thank you.
The Prather practice is located at 8902 North Meridian Street on the north side of Indianapolis, just south of the I-465 loop. If we can help you to achieve better health, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with our office at 317-848-8048. That's 317-848-8048. Join us again here next week or anytime on our website at thevoiceofhealthradio.com for The Voice of Health with Dr. Robert Prather. The Prather Plan weight loss program is safe, comprehensive, medically supervised, and designed just for you. Forget the trendy diets and instead start with a roadmap that actually resets your body's metabolism for optimal fat burning and increased energy. The Prather Plan has 6, 10, or 14-week programs with a proven record of success and with guaranteed weight loss. The Prather Plan is an individualized program that is tailored to your needs to create healthy new habits in your life. You'll receive support from a certified health counselor, a nutritionist, and an exercise physiologist for maximum results. Many weight loss programs can include unhealthy loss of muscle or organ weight. We target your ideal body fat percentage so you can lose body fat in a healthy way where the pounds stay off. Contact the Prather Practice today to schedule a consultation and create a healthier you. 317-848-8048 or on the web at thevoiceofhealthradio.com. The Prather Practice, restoring hope.